Welcome everyone to the AIOT Canada webinar. Our speaker today is Louis Lambert, and he'll be talking about pushing computing communications to the rugged edge and where AIoT fits into that. But before we start that, let me just give you a little bit of background about AIOT Canada and what's happening here, some of the announcements and things coming up. AIOT Canada is an industry association that represents and advocates for Canadian ecosystem of providers and adopters and product services, adopters of products and services of AIoT, which is the artificial intelligence of things. And we also have in our ecosystem investors, policymakers, and academia. Our association brings together everyone to connect, interact, and learn from each other. And the objective is to amplify your market growth and operational effectiveness, influence national policies, reduce business innovation and societal risks, advance your international reach, and generally contribute to Canadian economic growth through AIoT. So the question is, who do we serve? Who are our constituents as an association? Our constituents are providers of AIoT products and services, adopters of those products and services, innovators, academia, policymakers, investors and accelerators like economic development organization like accelerators like HealthSpark, for example, and also professional service providers such as consultants, lawyers that are in this space. And we do that by offering webinars like we do today to help cross-pollinate each other. We publish some newsletters occasionally, periodically. We also facilitate education and training on AI and IoT related topics. Although we don't do the training ourselves, we associate with other providers on that. We also offer networking events and our annual summit, which is actually coming up in May this year. We also have something called the National Strategy Council, which is in the process of guiding the development of a national strategy on IoT for the purpose of facilitating economic growth through AIoT. We also have a number of partnerships with various organizations that are related to AI or IoT, and we help to connect each other's members with each other. And we have also started an experts panel allowing our members to have access to experts on AIoT topics and have one-on-one or combined sessions with them. We are looking at and are planning to also do an industry mapping, which means listing a database of people and organizations in the AI and IoT space and information around them, what they do, what their services and products are, and so on. So that's what we do and how we do it. We are completely a volunteer organization at the moment. We do get funding through our memberships, which is necessary to do more, but also to pay our bills. So any additional funding from sponsors or partners is very much appreciated. So bottom line is we need you to help us along with sponsorships by volunteering and by all means becoming a member and take advantage of all the services that we provide to help Canada become a leader in AIoT. Speaking of the Spring Summit, it will be happening on May 27th. It's an all-day event starting around noon, going into the evening. We will be having a number of keynotes, fireside chat from a prominent industry leader or government, presentations, discussion panel, and roundtable. And this is all capped off with gala dinner and networking. So to that end, we're seeking sponsors for the event, seeking speaker nominations, and of course, volunteer effort to make this happen. Also, I should note that that recently within the last week we released a white paper. It's called the AIoT Opportunity for Canada, when artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things meet. And that paper discusses AIoT opportunities and challenges for Canada's growth, makes a case for an AIoT ecosystem in Canada, and also imperatives for a national strategy. So if you are interested in looking at this paper, which I encourage you to do, so you know what we are all about and what AIoT can do for Canada, you can go to this URL. And I will put that URL into the chat later in the webinar. Before we get to the speaker of the day, let me just talk about what's next. Our next webinar will be on February 26th. It will be given by Oleg Jabatorev, and he'll be talking about CMC microsystem strategy and roadmap for IoT growth in Canada. So please do join us then. He'll have a lot to say about IoT and what they are doing to encourage that in Canada in collaboration with us. Okay, so that brings us to our speaker today. Our speaker is Louis Lambert. He's the CEO of Six Harmonics. He has over 3 decades of experience in telecom, and a lot of it, at least 20 years, it has been focused on industrial IoT. He's formerly Senior Vice President at Redline, which was a communications company, with a total of 18 years there. He is a Director and a Vice President of AIOT Canada, and also formerly Director at CIPS, which is the Canadian Association of IT Professionals, and also the Intellect Association. So I'll leave it now to Louis to do his presentation and start sharing his charts. Yes.
Good. Thank you, Walter, for the great introduction. I have to see if I can live through it. So I put the QR code there under the picture in case some of you are not already connected. I know some of the familiar face, but I have to say I did not know all the names. So easiest to reach through LinkedIn and all of these other things. So first, thank you to AIoT Canada to give the industry and the ecosystem a platform. Thank you to the AIoT membership to pay for this, right? As Walter said. And also thank you to all of you guys participating. I see there's some members and there's some guests. So I'm setting my timer for 30 minutes, but I'm going to try to go faster than that because I do want to leave time for a question and answer, right? So with that said, let's move on to the next slide. So today I want to talk about the market data, the industrial rugged edge, the AIoT rugged industrial edge, and also the partners or players in the industry. I want to make sure that, excuse me, I'm going to clear my throat. I want to make sure that I'm setting the stage properly. There's a lot about AIoT out there. There's some people that work AIoT, indoor, some indoor and outdoor. This is going to be focused mainly outdoor. So it's out of the box thinking for AIoT. It might not be all the same AIoT you've been reading about. It's outside the building. So no factory floor, no warehouse, no Amazon. This is not what we're going to talk about this. We're going to basically talk about steel-toed boots and hard hat, right? It's IoT out there in the distance, not the IoT downtown, right? So that brings additional complexity. And if you look at the AIoT pie, I'm addressing a piece of that pie, right? So let's talk about market size. And, it's always good to start with how big is a market? Where is the market? I'm the CEO of a startup, so I'm always raising money. I'm in a Series A raise right now, so I'm talking about KGAR every day of the week. But it's important for everybody to understand where AIoT stands. Um, I've got 3 slides on the market because I got three different data sources. Fortune tells us that it's going to be 253 billion by 2020, 2030 at a KGAR of 32.4. And you may want to notice that number, 32.4. Today, I'm going to focus on the video surveillance, robust area asset management, predictive maintenance, and real-time machinery or condition monitoring. If you look at these blue box and you look at the pie chart, it's the biggest part of the AIoT. So I could talk about the other ones, but the company that employs me is not really focused on all of the other ones. And for the purpose of this presentation, I'm trying to focus on use case that are taking care of the majority of that pie. If you look at what Grandview says, look at the KGAR number. The KGAR number is just slightly different, not very, very, very different. Um, and they had almost the same number in 2024. So it looks like the two research center are aligned. What I want to focus on today is again the bigger piece of that pie. They consider that video predictive maintenance and inventory management is close to 75% of AIoT. Whatever it's indoor, outdoor, underground, below ground, above ground, onshore, offshore, it's about the same kind of things. People use AIoT for video, predictive maintenance, inventory management. These are the biggest chunk. So it makes sense to focus on use case that takes care of the biggest chunk. And then the last slide here that I have on market platform is not about the market itself, but the players within the market. It's about the platform. And it's important to see that the KGAR is higher on the platform than the consuming side of AIoT. And it's normal, right? In order to get the market to consume AIoT, the platform manufacturers and builders, software, hardware, they need to be ahead of the game. And that's what we're going to be talking about. I'm obviously working for a manufacturer, so I'll be talking about what we are doing in our side of the world. And then in fine print there, it's really hard to read, so let me read it for you. In blue, in the blue box that I decide to choose on, it's device management, connectivity management, and application management. These are the tools in order to deliver the AIoT that the other two market research were focused on. The use case were the two market research. This is what are the tools to deliver these use cases. So this didn't come from me. I didn't invent these numbers, but I'm definitely relying on them. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about this. You might have seen that kind of illustration of market condition and market requirement. If you have not, it's not a bad way to look at this. It started to the left and finishing to the right, right? Today is the right side. I remember visiting oil field or mining, a decade ago, 2 decades ago, and people that were doing data collection and centralized communication was common. BP used to have the biggest super data center in the world because they were collecting information from all their wells around the world. This was, I'm not talking 20 years ago, 5 years ago, they had the biggest in the world. If you move one step further in time, then they start doing PLCs, RTUs, whatever it's mining, oil and gas, factory floor. It was always that level. It was unified, and the device were interconnecting together but did not work together, right? Then the AIoT world got into an augmentation game. And then the hardware vendors all created their own thing. So the blue vendors, the red vendors, the green vendors, they all had their own thing. They really didn't talk to each other. And it was all about software, but the delivery of that software was proprietary hardware. And we'll talk about this in some of the use case. But this is a time we live today. There's a lot of industrial customers that are today using augmented IoT, and they think they're cutting edge. Some of them, have been doing it for a decade. The challenge there, of course, is that every time you want to change the software or improve the software, you may have to go change the little hardware that was given free of charge by the software company. So that causes some problems because you get a collection of hardware that are purpose built for a specific application. 5 years later, that application has tripled in size and hardware doesn't fit anymore. Where we are today, and where I'm going to spend the time on this presentation, is really the IoT, the AIoT world. And I have a little SIM card at the top, and it's not to tell you that it lives in the SIM card, but it's a mental reminder that AIoT needs to live where the SIM card is. So if you're using an LTE or 4G or 5G network, AIoT needs to be at the edge in the user equipment. It can't be centralized. It can't be at the tower side. It needs to be at the edge. So the carriers, the mobile network operators, call edge computing what's at the tower side. I call it the far edge or the remote edge, at the very edge of the network. Of course, if you're using a proprietary multi-point or Wi-Fi, there's no SIM card, but you know where I'm talking about. It needs to be at the very edge of the communication network. And that's when you need to start to have intelligence-driven systems that are autonomously talking to each other. The word autonomous doesn't mean just Tesla or autonomous hauler in the mine. It means autonomous decision, autonomous process. And step one is to get to, semi-autonomous process, then autonomous process, and then what I will call real autonomous, where you can disconnect the network and they're autonomous. Most of the mining autonomous mine process going on right now are semi-autonomous. You remove the network, it stops. The whole mine stops. It's not fully autonomous. It's autonomous process. It's not fully autonomous vehicle. There are a few exceptions, but just a few exceptions. So in order to have scalable AIoT, you basically need to have computing, communication, AI, and IoT where the value is created at the very edge, right? So that's what we're going to focus on today, this AIoT. Plus, we're the AIoT Official Association for Canada, right? So one of the things that is really interesting to talk about, and I'm dating myself here. Walter, you were very kind when you said I've been in that business for 30 years. I've been saying that for 10. Because I just refuse to mention the other number. So in the mining world, the PMO or the present mode of operation is every third-party software, collision avoidance, driver fatigue, positioning, all of these software that are residing on mining haulers, as an example, it can be anywhere between 10 to 20 of these software, are all delivered by the software vendor with a third-party Linux box, a tiny little box. And every one of these tiny little boxes talking to the network. So every one of these big honking haulers may have up to 20 different little antennas in Linux box in there. So when one of the pieces of software is defective, they need to call that hauler to the maintenance bay. They need to go through their list of 20 spares, find the right one, and change it. These haulers, I was at the world's biggest mining show in the fall. So Caterpillar's new big beast is now $9.8 million. So $10 million for one vehicle. So if you have that big beast and you have to stop it because you have a tiny little $200 Linux box that is defective, it's not really, 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 really good. I'm talking to mining companies every day of the week, and one of them tells me they're losing about $20 million in revenue a year just because of these tiny little boxes. Excuse me. In oil and gas, they have a similar problem. They want virtualized well pad cabinets. They want to virtualize PLCs, virtualize RTUs. Today, it's all purpose-built compute, right? They also have another problem, which this company here addressed, which they use a lot of 900 megahertz connectivity to reach the faraway well pads. That's the same 900 as your baby monitors and your cordless phone and all of these other things. So they need to exit that spectrum, and they're looking for a different spectrum. That's another problem that we focus on. But for the purpose of this discussion, a lot of oil and gas company will tell you they get anywhere between $6 to $10 million in annual um, lost productivity because they have to send somebody, two guys in a pickup truck in the end of the oil field to change a $200 PLC that is defective. And they get there and hopefully they have the right spare because they did some mergers and acquisition. They have 5 types of PLCs in the oil field. They want it virtual, right? And on the service providers, I'll use the example of TELUS. TELUS, in the last couple of years, have bought ADT, right? The alarm company. Why did they do that? It's because pipes or us is not good enough for them anymore. They need to be able to provide more differentiated services inside the residence or the place of business. So they need a smart delivery services platform. They can't just say, here's your cable modem or your DSL modem. Oh, and I bought TELUS, so I'm going to put the alarm systems. There's another box, and then I want a set-top box. There's a third box. They can't do that anymore. They can't. It's not scalable, right? So what are the challenges? Um, Regardless if you go into industrial or more consumer grade type technology, the challenges are that you need a new category of device. I turned off my camera on purpose to not distract you guys. Um, but I'm holding a phone in my hand, and that's what they want. Is it a phone or is it a camera? Is it a calculator or is it a heart rate monitor? What is it, right? They want a single piece of equipment that will virtualize all kinds of software so they can do really AIoT at the edge. Because you cannot have AI without IoT. You need sensors to provide data to the AI engine. And you cannot have machine language, ML assisted object recognition without cameras. And think about our phone. We've been doing AIoT with our phones for 5 to 10 years. So if you're trying to sell AIoT concept to your senior management, just tell them to look at their phone and look at their kids. They're using their phone as an AIoT device in a more sophisticated way that a $20 billion oil field. So we can learn a lot from what we do every day, and we can compare ourselves to what we do every day. This solution, the AIoT solution, and that's what the membership is so important. That's why the association is so important, is we need to enable AIoT anywhere. We need to digitize, automate. We need to deploy autonomous processes, decision, and eventually vehicle to transform operation. A fully integrated solution and platform of hardware and software is hard to achieve. Today, most people duct tape them together, right? They got this software, this piece of hardware, and they try to do something. If only the industrial space had something like a cell phone for the industrial world. If only you could have a marketplace where you can get, I want this camera software, I want this calculator, I want this, filtering system. I'm going to load the app on my phone. We're more advanced in a consumer goods than the industrial space. Excuse me. I'm fighting a bad cold. So let's talk about use case here. So the AIoT, or if you think about the smartphone approach of mining, the smartphone that would be in that big Libra truck, that smartphone would have Wi-Fi 6, it would have LTE, 4G or 5G, it would probably have some kind of LoRa system in some instance. A lot more, LoRa would be much more for the security camera above, right? So maybe the hauler doesn't need LoRa. But that cell phone would also have multiple apps, up to 20 of them, saving up to 20 different little Linux box inside that hauler, right? But more importantly, and I'm holding my phone again, it would have an MDM type experience. So MDM stands for mobile device management. If any one of you guys work for a big corporation, you have a company supplied phone and they run the application in your phone, they're locked. You cannot load new one, you cannot unload them. And the mobile device management allows them to deploy thousands of phones and manage them easily. The industrial space does not have that. Every software vendor that claims they're in AIoT has their own network management, and the mining or the oil and gas or the electrical utility has to deal with multiple screens. Looks almost like an old KICS system from 25 years ago. They have all these screens, all these terminals, and the ROC, the remote operating center, is a mess of different application, and the maintenance bay is a mess of different device, right? So it's really important for these people to reach what their kids are using every day, a smartphone, but for the industrial use. If you look at oil and gas, it's similar. I broke it between upstream and midstream. I don't want to talk about downstream. That's the gas station. And the gas stations are usually connected with some kind of connection. And the onboard computing of the gas station is they have a POS system, they have a server rack. They don't need our type of AIoT, our type meaning what I'm here to talk about. There's other companies that focus on that. I'm focused on the outdoor world, right? So in upstream, you've got thousands of well pads. Excuse me. Every one of these well pads have RTUs, PLCs, all of this stuff because they have rules and they have dangers, right? If a well pad is leaking, if a well pad is on fire, old days was rudimentary, dry contact type of IoT that would shut it down. Then they got a little bit smarter and they put PLCs and RTUs. Now they want to go to the next level. And they want each well to make their own decision, have their own AI, and do the analytics of all the cameras that are on the location right there. And only communicate the results of the analytics to the cloud where the data is consolidated, right? So I'll give you a real live example. A well pad in New Mexico with four, AI-enabled cameras to verify that there's no cows or there's no thieves or that there's no fire because the sensors are 20 years old, so they put cameras. So if they spend $12,000 for each camera with built-in AI versus consolidate the data from the camera and do the AI in the cabinet, will save them a ton of money. But today, they're not even doing that. Most of the time, the camera traffic goes all the way to the tower site. So if they lose the connection to the well pad, they lose the AI and the thing, they lose a lot of control. So when I say it needs to be at the very edge, is that's where they want to push computing. Oil and gas is on a mission to push computing at every well pad. Not just computing for basic stuff, autonomous decision and process computing, and only sends the results to the cloud. If you look at the electrical utility, and that could be water, wastewater, they're having the same kind of challenge. It's very similar to what oil and gas is doing. They have lots of sensors dispersed over a big geography, right?
Okay.
And these sensors are talking to either a LoRa network or a Wi-Fi network. In some case, a lot of it is 4G, 5G, and others like multi-point, 5.8 gig or whatever, even TV white space. But the key here is that the use case is fairly similar to oil and gas. Very different than mining because the geography is really high. The device density is not as dense. Mining is a small geography with very high device density. Excuse me. So the use case here for AIoT is to be able to make decision on closing the dam, doing this, closing the recloser or putting it back in service locally without having to wait for somebody in the head office to make a decision. Having all these decisions done locally at machine speed but with the intelligence that has been programmed in there and the machine learning that learns over time the specific characteristic of that installation, right? I kept this one for almost second to last because I really think that there's a lot of ink about smart farming and smart ag. Um, that ink is all kinds. It's about the health of the animals and the health of the plants and all of this. As an AIoT association, there's a huge opportunity here. Uh, I'm gonna, for those of you that know this, so sorry for that 1 minute, but you might not know that on these tractor, if I was to blow up the pictures, they're tiny little antennas, and there's a computer on the tractor, a pretty decent sized computer. They are filming every plant, not the row or the crop, every plant. And there's sprayers. They're not spraying the same thing to every plant. If a plant looks dead, or if it looks like it's got fungi, it will spray anti-fungus. If the plant looks not so healthy and it needs to grow, they will spray something else. Most of them have 4 to 5 different tanks, and they spray on a per plant base. So as they drive, they analyze, look at the picture, object detection, they look at the health of the plant itself, the leaves, and they make an instant decision as to what needs to be sprayed and sprayed it, and it goes on to the next plant while the vehicle is moving. And they can do that, like this one here has 5 row, 10 row, 15 row. But they have some that are much bigger than this, and they have some that carries more than 3 or 4 chemicals. So the AIoT amount of work being done there is fantastic. And then on top of that, of course, they collect information on, what's happening with the weather and the temperature, the hydration, and all of this. Last use case is service provider. I'll be really quick here. We talked about it a little bit, and I like to use the TELUS example. Every carrier is getting into more value at their residents, and more stickiness for their service. Number portability in the mobile world was difficult for them to accept. So now they have to sell more services and more stickiness, right? So I took an attempt here to map the AIoT players in Canada for 2 purposes. I've got my AIoT vice president hat on for a second. These are all prospective members of our association. There's a whole lot more, but this is a sampling of some of the people that we need to knock at the door. So I'm distracting you a little bit from the presentation. If you work for any one of these companies or you know any one of these companies, take the QR code that is on the presentation, contact me and say they would be a good member. Of course, my 6 Harmonics hat, these are potential partners, right? But the purpose of this meeting here is about AIoT Canada, right? So these are all potential members of the association, right? It's very important. So I've got 4 or 5 minutes for a little commercial on the company. It's not a commercial, it'll give you an update. We're in the AIoT business, obviously. We're building a multi-rat computing platform. RAT stands for radio access technology. We don't believe that people should have multiple radios at each location. We don't believe they should have radios, then compute, then AI, all in separate box. We believe that it should be into one enclosure. And if you want to change something, it's just like changing your phone. You're going to the Apple store or you're going to any one of the store and you say, I'm having a problem. I want to upgrade my phone. They give you a new phone, nice and shiny. By the time you leave the Costco store with your new phone, it's already been transferred. All your data is transferred. That's what the industrial world wants. They don't have it today. We take it for granted in the consumer side, but it doesn't exist in the industrial space. So in order to achieve that, you need, I'm going to use the mouse here. You need at the top a marketplace for people to choose their application, just like Apple Store or Google Play. You need to have a controller to be able to control all these applications that you're loading and unloading in your device, just like you do with an MDM in a mobile world, or or as an individual having the ability to choose this calculator and delete that one, or choose this filtering system and delete that one. But more importantly, you need the platforms. You need hardware platforms. I know hardware is a big no-no. Yeah, we want it all software, but it has to live somewhere. All of this software has to live somewhere, and that's why we buy these smartphones. So the smartphone of the industrial world needs to be able to have containers. A lot of these large account want Cisco secure routing, so you need to have built-in Cisco router and all of this. But they all want 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 4, not good enough. It doesn't have a scheduler. It doesn't have the quality of service that the industrial IoT world needs. Remember, they're mission critical. They don't like to redial because they lost the communication. They can't go down and they have to have service level agreement. So that's what you need. So we're developing two flavors of these solutions. The controller is going to be the MDM and all of the facilitation to be able to deploy at scale. And then you have to have two little devices, and I'll turn on my camera in a minute. But you need to have two devices. One is more for the lighter edge compute. Um, as an example, you just want to do a lower concentration and you want LTE and TV white space, as an example, right? That's at every customer prem equipment, right? And the other one is a little bigger, much bigger. This is something that would go on a hauler as an example, a big quad core, 20 different Docker containers, onboard Cisco routing, GNSS, Bluetooth to go above ground, below ground. We're talking about a mini industrial data center that fits into it. When it breaks, or if something you change it, takes 5 minutes to change. You just change all your communication interface. You change all your compute, all your memory, all your routing, all your switching, all your AI, all your camera, machine learning, analytics. You change everything at once. That $10 million hauler stops for 10 minutes. You've changed everything and it's going back on the road. So with that said, we're at the point where we need to talk about Q&A, and I'm going to turn on my camera for a second. This was the little one, just so you can see this, my hand. I'm not 7 foot tall. And this is the bigger beast. I need two hands because this thing has huge amount of horsepower. So with that said, enough on the company. I took 4.5 minutes. We're almost, we're at 30 minutes and 24 seconds. So this would be a good time for questions. The QR code is there. If we don't know each other, please connect. And if you know some friends or people in the industry that should belong to this association, you should really write me a line, introduce us. Either myself or somebody else will contact them. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for being members. If you're not a member, you should join, and tell your friends. So floor is open for questions.
Thank you, Louis. That was great. A lot of good insights. Definitely like your idea with the agriculture use case, the video of every plant and
It's real.
customized spraying.
It's real. It's happening today.
Yeah. So I have a question. There's another question in the chat, but I'll ask my question first. Given that agriculture use case, but others as well, I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on the state of art in terms of AI compute hardware, AI purposed compute hardware, like GPUs or other accelerators, and how is that making its way into the edge, into those boxes in the tractor or
So there's a Google Coral in there, and that's how you can do ML assisted object recognition. It didn't take brain surgery to think about putting it in there. It just took customers to tell us what they need. we're not smarter than the other people, right? We just listen really good and we go to work. And thankfully, the company does not have, you know, $100 million or $1 billion worth of investment in other equipment that they need to make sure they don't, cannibalize. But the idea is that listen to what they want. So you can have an LTE in there, LoRa in there, PV white space, Wi-Fi 6, and a Google Coral, right? Why Google Coral? It's one of them. There's lots of different, but when we do demonstration to our customers, we use a Google Coral, and there's lots of software written for it. So that allows us to bring a lot of different software players. May I answer your question?
Yes, in a way, I'm just wondering if some of the other ones like NVIDIA or whoever else have a play in this particular space. I know they do in the data center and so on, but
Yeah, so we the reason why we're customer driven. We're a startup, right? So we're customer driven, and the customers that have given us the this doesn't exist yet. Like it's in development, but we get $2 million worth of orders and deposit because they need it. So these people, I said, can you do Google first? Sure,
yeah,
we'll do the Google first, right? But we're not limited. We're just coin operated at this time.
absolutely. Okay, great. There's another question here from Sal. I'll read it. You have hinted at the key technological and infrastructural gap that still need to be addressed for AIoT to achieve its potential and widespread adoption. How can industry stakeholders collaborate to overcome them?
Wow. So Sal, I don't know what you expect for an answer, but I can't help it. I gotta say this AIoT Canada is probably the first door that we as a community need to open and grow. So we have a good representative. We already have great representation with IRAP, with Terry Matthews of the world, some of the leaders, right? With some of the manufacturers, some of the users. But the fact is that AIoT is not, SCADA 2.0. It's not Industry 4.0. It's at a higher level. And in order for this to grow and foster at the speed that it needs to foster, it needs more vendors, but more importantly, it needs an association and it needs a voice. So this is what AIoT Canada is supposed to be. It can only get better with more members and more people. So Sal, I don't know if that's what you were hinting to, but I'm sorry if that's not what it was. On the other side, from a manufacturing perspective, so um, standards based, use standards based, use a Qualcomm LTE card, use the Google Chrome. Don't reinvent the wheel. Make it simple for third-party application. The reason why my phone is so important to me is that there are thousands of people writing code all over the world for my device. So we need to have devices that are non-proprietary.
Excellent.
Next question.
Um, there aren't any questions there, but I have a question for you as usual. So you enumerated a number of different use cases, agriculture and oil and gas and so on. I'm just wondering if you think those are the top markets for AIoT at the moment, or is there some other vertical or market sector that's also adopting this at a higher or similar level?
So two answers. My AIoT VP hat is there's a lot more market than this, right? My CEO hat is I can we can only chew on so much at the same time. The DNA of the company and my last 30 plus 10 years, and the team that I have with me, we have been living in the outdoor IoT world all of our lives. So our focus is out there, right? Outdoor, out there. Um, there was another speaker last month that did a great job about warehouse and all of this, right? So there's multiple places where AIoT Canada need to be able to play. Um, Once we grow up and we get bigger and we have bigger member, we should have some different focus silos. But the silo where I live is the outdoor AIoT for industrial.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. There's instead of typing it in, I'll just ask it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. Early in my career, I won't let you do the math, but it was in 1985. I worked in automotive manufacturing, Honda, and at that point, I thought PLCs were on the way out. They were using ladder logic and they were fairly antiquated, the sort of the development methodology. And it seemed very core to your presentation. I'm just wondering, maybe they've changed and it's it is the thing electricians understand and can program. But I wonder if part of the marketplace evolution is impacted by sort of obscure development methodology.
Yeah, Charles, it's a very good question. I won't name the oil company, but there's a very, very famous oil company that has about 40,000 wells in Bakersfield, California. They did multiple acquisition. Um, I'll tell you the status of that. They have wells on skids, right? And they don't have GPS. They don't know where their wells are, right? They have no idea. And there's no road. There's so many, you can throw a stone from one to the other. Google Bakersfield oil field and zoom it out on Google map, and it's obscene, right? So one of the things that comes to the reality is you go there and there are some wells that have been there 60 years, and there's some wells that have cabinets that are 45 years old. And the cost, if a well produces 3,000 barrels a day, they don't care how much it costs to update it. But if it produces 75 barrels a day, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So the PLCs and RTU, that language exists because some of these assets are working, they're delivering revenue, they're not costing much, they only need grease from time to time, and they don't change them because they don't deliver enough. If you go in North Dakota, when they do some fracking and the wells go to 1,200, 1,800, 3,000 barrels a day, they don't care how much it costs. They upgrade them, right?
Yeah.
So there's a huge collection. Water, wastewater, electrical utility. There's electrical utility with equipment and sensors that is 40 years old out there. Oil field would much prefer put a camera on a well pad rather than change all the sensors. The sensors may not be accurate anymore, but if there's a fire, they'll see it. That same oil company that I was telling you about, they fly a Cessna 24 hours a day over their oil field with thermal cameras because it's cheaper to fly a Cessna than to upgrade all the sensors. So there's a lot of old technology. That's why RTU, PLCs, you're hearing about LoRa. There's some LoRa installation that are fairly old, right? And narrowband IoT did not take off in Canada, right? Or North America. That's a great question. And we have to deal with legacy and they have to deal with it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And the other thing I think from a marketplace, I think the same thing's happening in the software-defined vehicle. We might see a marketplace emerge, but everyone's kind of doing their own thing. Every automotive OEM, I assume, part of these large-scale industrial outdoor AIoT are suffering from the same thing where they're trying.
Yeah. Caterpillar's got their own favorite, Komatsu's got their own favorite, and then you've got third-party people that are writing software that are trying to improve. The result of that is, if you guys know what a CAN bus is, that's the interface that the vehicle has. There's some customers that have different numbers, but it's up to 15 different people accessing the CAN bus. That's ridiculous. They got to stop that, right? They got to have one person accessing the CAN bus. You guys know what a broker is, right? You need to have one person accessing it, broker the information to the other so that environment is secure. That's not happened just yet. That is in the process. Having edge computing, right? Having that beast that I showed you earlier on in there basically allows you to be a CAN proxy, right? And you can now make sure that the people that are worried about oil pressure don't have to share their information with the guy that is worried about tire pressure. It's two different people. They should not access the same thing with the same importance. So That's an evolution. AIoT brings that ability to evolve and solve these business problems that are not technology problems. They're politics, they're business, they're SLA. You know, the maintenance contract penalties on these big haulers is just as much as the hauler itself, right? Good, very good question. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Sorry to monopolize, but since there's no other questions, this is a great presentation, and you definitely brought home the functionality that needs to be integrated into these rugged boxes. And that's all electrical and software functionality. I'm just wondering if you are finding any particular challenges in the physical aspects of that ruggedness,
Oh, yeah.
there's a weather,
Yeah.
temperature, etc.
So
What can
first, you can't have fans, right?
Right.
Because the dust would go in. So it has to be IP67, IP68. When you pack that much horsepower in a tiny box, you need to be worried about environmental. Thankfully, 18 years of building, the team that I brought with me, 18, 20 years of building radios that were in a desert in Oman for a decade without service call. That experience is important.
Mhm.
But what's also really important is as you create flexibility, which interface you want, your heat dissipation change on a SKU, right, on a variation. So for the customer, the importance is to make sure that they install it once and they forget about it. I call it quiet enjoyment, right? You don't want to be disturbed.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I take it there's no more questions. So thank you everybody for joining in. Just a reminder that if you would like to speak at one of these webinars, please let us know. Let me know. We give priority to our members, but anyone from the industry can speak here. So if you are interested, please give me a shout. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for
Thank you.
joining, and become a member
Thank you.
if you're not. Bye for now.
Take care.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.